Ben, let's bring you on screen because, of course, one of the powerhouses in that global governance watch that I started today's news with is the World Economic Forum, and I'm glad that you are still absolutely on their case.
Absolutely on the case, Brian. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Debbie, it's lovely to see you. And we're talking about the World Economic Forum, who are committed to improving the state of the world. Brian started by talking about global governance. The World Economic Forum is committed to improving the state of the world. You can read that in two ways, just making things better, or you could be talking about global governance, the state of the world. I think that's what they're doing, does exactly what it says on the tin, the World Economic Forum. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how global governance drills right the way down to the front line of British politics and our economic system, and give you a few examples of how that has been happening over the last week. The World Economic Forum took place in Davos, started last Monday, and we kicked things off by talking about wealth inequality. All right, so last week I showed you these numbers, this graph, showing the huge increase in wealth inequality in the US over the past 60 years and how it tracks very closely to the founding of the World Economic Forum in 1971, the Global Leader of Tomorrow program, which started in 92, the Young Global Leader program, which started in 2005, the Global Shapers program, which started in 2011. These numbers run up to 2014. And they show a doubling of wealth concentration into the hands of the 1% over 52 years. And if that line carries on going at that same trajectory, we can probably assume that we're looking at about 85 to 90% control by the 1% today. And as we know, they want to drive that up to 100%. We will own nothing and we will be happy. And we think that's probably around 2030, which is a key date for the global 1%, for the World Economic Forum, and for this entire agenda. And crucially, I'm really going to reinforce this point, right? It's not an accident. Yeah, the point of a system is what it does. POSIWID, that comes from Stafford Beer. The concentration of wealth into ever fewer hands is the plan. And it's directly linked to the existence of the World Economic Forum and the things that happen there. And this is essentially being delivered through a fascist system. So this is a quote from Mussolini. Fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism because it is a merger of state and corporate power. And Benito Mussolini invented fascism. So I'm going to go with his definition over anyone else's. Right now, let's bring that to life a little bit. What does this corporatist system look like? How's it being run? Well, this is what it looks like. Yeah, so this is the World Economic Forum UN Strategic Partnership Framework signing ceremony in June 2019. Right, so the World Economic Forum represents the corporate side of things, the private markets, and the UN represents the state side of that. Right, that's a public-private partnership, and you can see here Bergbrinde, president of the World Economic Forum, a man who makes me ashamed, I'm afraid to say, to be Norwegian. I'm a quarter Norwegian, and he's Norwegian, and that is not good for Norway, that guy being up there. He's alongside Uncle Klaus, founder and chairman of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, very well-known figure. And they're there alongside Antonio Guterres, still currently the Secretary General of the UN, and a lady called Amina Mohammed, who describes herself as Nigerian British. I don't know what that means. British or Nigerian, I think. But anyway, she's Deputy Secretary General of the UN, and she's chair of the UN Sustainable Development Group, crucially, because the Sustainable Development Group oversee the Sustainable Development Goals, and this is the program that is driving the global policy agenda. Right? There are 17 of these. Read them and weep. Or maybe not actually, because they sound quite nice on first examination. So, no poverty, zero hunger, these are all things that we can get behind, right? But the devil, as they say, is in the detail. And behind each of those goals is a global, fascist, public-private marketplace that is designed to accrue power and wealth for the global 1%. That's what these goals are doing. That's how they're being deployed, ultimately. And don't take my word for it. Let's just have a quick look here at a slide from Lisa Witter, from Apolitical Foundation, who I've spoken about a lot previously. Apolitical Foundation are currently rethinking the entire purpose and vision of Britain for the UK government. She's also a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. And the way that she talks about in her own materials, we'll provide a link to the video that this comes from. This is how she talks about the SDGs, right? So she says that they are being used to merge the two main global power structures: government on the left-hand side, which is public, and financial markets, as she describes it, on the right-hand side, which is private, and the ring in the center, those are the 17 SDGs. That's what binds those two things together, and that's coming from a young global leader of the World Economic Forum, right? So, and that symbol is incredibly important. If someone's wearing that badge, if you can see someone wearing that badge, or they're stood near it, they're representing that, then ultimately they're the enemy of the 99% of the global population. And importantly, actually, if we just get that back up on the screen, at the bottom there, you can see that climate change is in bold. That's the big grift that's driving everything forward. They want to make everything a climate issue because that's what's driving the SDGs and this huge global public-private marketplace. Now let's get back to Davos and show how that's been deployed at Davos House. And this is the World Economic Forum outpost of Gold's House, which is run by Freud Communications, a UK-based strategic communications consulting firm, a private sector organisation, and this is basically the global propaganda hub for the SDGs. Let's have a little look inside what's going on. It's I've clipped this together from a few of their videos. It's a grand convening, lots of powerful people, business cards being swapped, networking taking place, some of the big beasts of liberal media. So we've got John Chappell there this year, comparing and hosting. James Harding doesn't seem to have made it, actually. He's probably too busy getting his feet under the table at The Guardian. But we had Bad Al Campbell there, who is now a mere podcaster. He's no longer the Iron Fist in Blair's Velvet Glove, although he probably still is, actually, in the background. And we'll come on to Blair again in a minute. Moira Forbes from the Forbes dynasty. And she's doing a lot around the female agenda, the lady boss stuff, alongside Janet Trencali from EY. And then David Beckham, actually, shaming himself and his nation, and really struggling to pronounce the word philanthropy, actually, which is quite entertaining. And we're going to come back to Beckham at the end of the show. Debbie's got a little video clip that she's going to share with us there. And this is what it's all about, right? So it's dreaming big dreams. It's all very lofty and aspirational and feel good. And the people who walk through the doors, they're presented with this kind of messaging. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of people there probably think that this is a good thing, right? You know, there's a lot of talk of love, and that actually comes from that sign is brought there by the Freud Communications team that comes from their London office. I don't think their definition of love is the same as everyone else's, though. I think this is really just manipulative, a lot of this stuff. This tapestry also comes from the Freud Communications office. I've talked about this a lot on the column over the past 12 months. That is the Walthamstow tapestry by Grayson Perry. Walthamstow is in E17 in London. I think that's a direct reference to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. There's a lot of symbology here. And that basically shows human babies being sacrificed to Satan by the corporations. And I just don't think that's an accident, to be honest with you, right? The fact that that's there and that they have these meetings in front of that tapestry, I think it's just mind-blowing. But anyway, what does that process look like? Well, the public-private partnership. Yeah, so I'll give you just one example here quickly of TikTok and the WHO Foundation, World Health Organization Foundation, talking about Mind Matters, enhancing digital well-being through public-private partnership. Right, so that's TikTok, who is one of the main drivers of mental health problems, particularly in young people, convening a meeting about digital well-being. Yeah, and that's being compared by Jeremy Farrar, who's the chief scientist at the WHO. He was actually at the Wellcome Trust. He was a member of SAGE during COVID, and I actually know someone who used to work in his office when he was at the Wellcome Trust. And he was basically responsible for redirecting the Wellcome Trust, one of the biggest charitable funds in the pharmaceutical sector, by redirecting it towards climate change. And so that agenda was put into Wellcome by him, and he's there leading that out. And again, it doesn't make any sense. It's just massively hypocritical and really just a big PR exercise for corporations, frankly. We also had this year the celebration of 10 years of Project Everyone. And this is the propaganda campaign for the SDGs. They love to kind of separate these things out. This is a UN and a World Economic Forum program, but they rebrand things and they have a different department for this and a different program for that. And that just gives them a sort of basically camouflage. It means that you can't point at it and say, this is that. It's a way of obscuring what they're doing, essentially. And this is a huge global program. It was founded by Kate Garvey and Gail Galley, who are the two ladies there who run projects. Everyone, they've worked with the Spice Girls, Daniel Craig, Leonardo DiCaprio. This is really about tapping into popular culture. And they're very excited, first of all, because they've done 10 years and we'll probably do a bigger thing on this, but also because they've just announced some new non-execs, including, really interestingly, this guy, Ravi Guru Murthy, who's the CEO of Nesta, which means that he looks after Nesta and the behavioural insights team, right? So this is nudge unit stuff, British state assets, essentially, using mind control techniques to drive the SDG agenda. And that was part of the legacy of the first Blair government. So Nesta was a year zero programme put in place by Blair. Kate Garvey was also a key Blair aide. She was actually working directly with him at Downing Street. And of course, Tony Blair was there at Gold's House last week talking about the clean energy transition. And again, this is another perfect example of a public-private partnership. You've got Tony Blair, exec chairman of his own institute, representing government, representing the state all around the world. And then you have Greg Jackson on the left there, who's the CEO of Octopus Energy. And they co-hosted what they call a high-level roundtable on how we can accelerate the clean energy transition. Yeah. So again, this is all clean energy, climate change, public-private marketplace, huge coalescence of power and money in order to implement this global agenda. And in the room was Jonathan Reynolds, Secretary of State for Business, who's currently UK cabinet member, who was actually at that event. He was there alongside Rachel Reeves. This is another event earlier on that same day in Davos. This was KPMG and the City of London convening a discussion around the transformation of the UK economy, and particularly around inward investment. And obviously the Department of Business and Trade was trumpeting how fantastic all of this was, saying that in just 6 months, the Prime Minister's plan for change has punched through so many of the blockers holding back investment. We've lifted the ban on onshore wind, great for Octopus, obviously. We've launched the most ambitious planning reforms in a generation, also great for Octopus. We've set out plans for our industrial strategy to make the UK a leading destination for growth. And we hosted the International Investment Summit, where we secured a record-breaking £63 billion of inward international investment, which is essentially asset stripping by people who go to Davos, for example, of UK national assets. And Octopus, as I've kind of touched on a few times, has done very well out of this kind of program. And we can see here from Cornwall Insight that Octopus Energy has just become the GB's, Great Britain's largest household supplier of energy. They've overtaken British Gas. They now serve 12.9 million household energy accounts with a 23% market share. Cornwall Insight say that Octopus Energy started from zero market share in 2015 and has worked his way up to the top spot on this measure in less than a decade, which is extremely striking given that this is a highly regulated market. So it seems like they've really been getting a helping hand from the political classes here. And also, interestingly, 2015 was the year that the SDGs were first introduced. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. And all of that has been driving that line up towards the top right-hand side, delivering more money and more power into the hands of the 1%.
Ben, thank you very much for excellent analysis there. And I'm going to look our audience in the eyes today and say, well, of course, none of us really knew this was going on many years ago, but now we do know it's going on. Why is it still happening? Because we are not challenging it through the systems that we have. When people say to me, it's pointless talking to your MP, I say no, because we still have a parliament. The fact parliament isn't working is because we are allowing it to get away with this nonsense. So if you are outraged by what we've shown you today and you want to do something about it, the time has come that constituent in each constituent See, people pin their MPs to the wall in the nicest possible way in order to make them aware of what's happening and the fact that you, as a constituent, do not want this global governance. It's up to us. It's not for somebody else to do it. Let's move on, and we'll say to the audience a big thank you for everybody who's supporting the UK column. If you're not a member, then please do become a member and support us. You can make a donation or join us on a monthly membership or an annual membership or a lifetime membership, as some people like to do. We can only do what we do with your financial support. You can, of course, make a purchase from the shop, also make a purchase from the shop. And we like to point out that we do provide Clive de Carle's health products, and we receive a small commission on sales for that. So that may be something of interest to you, but we can only run the UK column with the financial support of our audience. We do what we do for you to be able to share information. We're pushing out on as many other platforms as we can, but of course YouTube has still got us blocked. Facebook is a little bit iffy as well, so we rely on our audience, our viewers, our listeners to help us share this material wherever they can. Now, tomorrow at 1 p.m, interview is going out. This is Charles Mallet interviewing Catherine Gunn, and Catherine's telling the extraordinary and timeless events surrounding her arrest under the Official Secrets Act, whilst a highly dubious case was made for war with Iraq. So in many ways, not a lot has changed with what's going on in the Middle East and Ukraine, but I encourage you to watch that interview. Excuse me, Diane, I think this is one for you. Welcome to the news.
Yes, thanks, Brian. And hello, Ben and Debbie, full house today. So I just wanted to mention again that I've been mentioning the last few weeks, the Scottish People's COVID-19 inquiry tickets are still available for this. They're £25 per person, including lunch, coffee, tea, etc., with a number of really good speakers. And I will be speaking, among the other speakers, about, in my particular case, about the propaganda that has led up to 2019 and 2020 and kind of what happened and how that sort of drove the narrative of what the government did in the UK and around the world during the COVID period. And related to this as well, there's a podcast that just came out over the weekend, which is on the next slide. Professor Richard Innes, who is the chair of Common Knowledge Edinburgh, which I am also a member of the executive committee, and we are the ones organizing this conference. And he spoke to Craig Houston over the weekend about the conference and about what he has seen so far in the evidence that's come out of the government COVID inquiry, which, by the way, has cost £25 million and counting. So please watch that podcast and join us on the 22nd of February at the conference if you are in Scotland.
Diane, thank you very much for that. Now, before I put your first slide up on screen, I just wanted to say I was outraged when I saw the BBC using Burns Night as an opportunity to promote the fact that King Charles was visiting Auschwitz. So the Burns celebration completely pushed into a different arena, dark, depressing stuff. If that wasn't bad enough, I think your first slide takes the biscuit.
It certainly does, Brian. I was actually spending Burns Night hearing Burns poetry and listening to Scottish music, as we should be in Scotland. However, Keir Starmer decided to celebrate it with a drag queen at 10 Downing Street. So this is a former winner of RuPaul's Drag Race, apparently, who was there dressed up in all kinds of makeup and Scottish... you can't call it a kilt. I don't know if you can call it a kilt if the person is actually trying to be a woman. I don't know what you call that, but wearing tartan and too much makeup, celebrating with Keir Starmer. Can't make it up.
No, and I'm not going to comment further because